It's recording, right?
Sharing
Fantastic.
is not caring.
What's going on, everybody? Episode number 2 of The Bourbonist. We're smoking the Wiseman by Foundation, talking about wise men. Join us at the table.
Nice. Perfect.
Short and sweet.
Not bad. Wait for him to get set. Red 19.
I was going to give a Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Red
quote
19. What's it?
He said short and sweet. I was about to be title of your sex tape.
Short and sweet title of your sex tape. All right. Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are we doing?
Fantastic.
Great cigar.
It really is. I get it, though. The pepper is real right up front.
Yeah.
But then it kind of smooths out.
Yeah, it mellowed into like a marshmallow taste for me. But it started out with like red pepper flakes, and now it's nice.
Joe's in the final third already.
That's right.
15 minutes in.
Getting ready to lap you guys.
Start your second one.
I brought 4 cigars, and I'll get through all of them.
I brought 4 of the same, so I can meet you at each increment of the cigar.
I bought 4 Wiseman just so I could have more wisdom than all of you.
That's right.
All right.
If only it worked that way.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it does.
It's kind of like drinking smart water. People are like, I drink smart water. It doesn't work like you think it does.
You are what you eat. Not
I've
what you
tried.
drink.
That's right. You are what you eat. Hot dog. Oh. So we're drinking some Caldi's coffee, which is, I believe, started in St. Louis, which is kind of cool. They're nationwide now, but they started in Kirkwood, I
Wow.
believe.
I didn't know that.
I think their headquarters, like, they still roast everything in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But it's the vintage something, I don't know. But I got a big old bag of it because it's 8:30 in the morning and we're not going to drink whiskey this early because we're not going to appropriate that kind of behavior.
That's right.
PSA. So when you guys hear the word wisdom, what do you like? What does it make you think of? Like, if you just clear your mind, I know that's really hard for you to do, but sorry, he looked like he's gonna
I don't
kill
even
me.
know what that means.
Yeah, I was.
But if you want to clear your mind, everybody, and just be like, play that age-old game of like, I'm gonna say a word, and the first thing that comes to mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, focus in. So when you hear the word wisdom, like, what do you guys think?
I get it. First thing that I think of is experiences. It's kind of like life experiences. It's someone who's gone through a lot, like regardless of good or bad. It's just someone who's lived through a lot of different experiences.
Yeah. Experiences, different failures.
That's actually interesting because the name of the cigar, Wawense, like, that word, like, came from the term that meant, like, old one.
Oh.
So it's like wise man, but old one. Kind of same thing.
Well, and if you think about it, when people think of wise individuals, they think of an older person who's gone through a lot. Like, when you think of a wise individual, you think of someone who's, like, it's not like someone who's 20, 25.
Yeah.
Not a lot of wise people at 25 years old, but, like, whenever someone talks about hanging around or socializing with kind of elderly individuals, the phrase that I hear a lot is there's a lot of wisdom there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I think of trying to learn wisdom about life, the first person I'm going to go see is an older individual.
Yeah. Do you think you can? I don't know. I correlate wisdom with pain. Quite frankly, like the pain of failure and the pain of loss and the pain of unsuccessfulness in situations and different things. Like, I don't know. I feel like anybody who knows me personally and has heard my story, it's kind of like, I tell people I've lived enough pain for multiple lifetimes. But I'm still learning every day. So I don't think wisdom ever stops growing. But it does come through failure, pain, experience, like that experience. And whether it's like if you're talking on a, like, just from a business standpoint, and you're like, well, I experienced this. Well, what was the experience? Well, it was failure. All right, cool. Don't do that again. You move forward from that. I experienced this. Well, what was the outcome? Well, that was actually was success. Okay, keep doing that. So, like, wisdom takes multiple forms.
Right.
I'm kind of talking all over the place, but
Oh yeah, I think wisdom is lived experiences, you know, and lessons learned. And
Yep.
You can have good lessons and bad lessons. Just depends on what you do with them.
Well, and I think that's key, is kind of something you allude to, is the role that reflection plays. Because if you don't slow down, and whether success or failure, if you don't take a step back and analyze the situation or what happened from more of an objective standpoint, I don't think, because if you succeed at something and you don't find out why it succeeded, why it worked, like, there's less of a chance of you actually doing that again, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But, you know, the word that comes to mind is insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
oh yeah, yeah,
And so if
It's
you
like
continue...
the opposite of wisdom in some ways.
Yeah. Well, and that's what happens if you don't reflect upon your failures. If you just go, well, that didn't work out, if you don't find out why,
yeah,
You're gonna do it over again.
yeah,
yep.
history always tends to repeat itself. Why is that? It's because no one takes a look back at history and goes, why didn't that work?
Well, I wonder if history only repeats itself because people don't change.
Yeah.
Like, changed behavior creates new experiences. And so, I mean, yes, history repeats itself if you keep doing the same dumb things. I almost swore there. I was very close.
I'm proud of you.
It's morning and I'm cranky.
Well, you posted that Mark Twain quote a couple weeks ago, and
Yeah.
he says, like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it surely does rhyme. And I like that, 'cause it's like no two events are really like exactly the same,
Right.
but you can start to pick up on certain patterns of human behavior that are continuously happening.
Yeah.
And he had a life that was nuts. And yeah, if you want to write a book on wisdom, I mean, other than the actual book of wisdom, that you want to take after him. And he actually, at the end of his life, he was super bitter towards just manhood in general. Yeah, he believed that, he wrote in his memoirs, he said that he believed that all men are echoes. We're just trying to shadow something that's not our own. We're not carving our own path. We're not doing anything. It's pathetic.
You know how fitting that is nowadays?
Yeah. Or what's the Emerson quote that I gave you yesterday?
Oh gosh.
Do not go the path that is carved. Go instead, carve your own path and leave a trail. And that's, yeah, anyway. What were you saying?
No,
What was your point with that quote?
It's just, it's the same as, it kind of goes along with the, with Mark Twain's, like, all men are echoes. Like, stop trying to follow suit. Because that's how history does become repeated in history. You know, the same mistakes are made because you're just trying to follow in someone else's shoes instead of creating a life of your own.
I think it's both and, because you don't have to live your life in opposition to everything.
No.
You know, and that's probably not what he meant. But like, there is something good about following tradition and, you know, in a sense, following your father's footsteps. You know, if he left a good legacy and a good example for you.
Yeah.
But I think what's sad is when people just don't do things because other people are doing it, whether it's good or
And
bad.
that's kind of what we have now. We have the opposite extreme of that in our culture today, where it's like everyone thinks that is just trying to do something unique just to do something unique,
Right.
rather than like seeking out what is the best and like seeking out what is true. It's like, oh, I want to be this standout person. Like, I don't want to be like anyone else. It's like, okay. And to your point, like, you know, we should take wisdom from the people who have come before us rather than being like, oh, me in my own little head, I know better than everyone else who's gone before me.
Yeah.
It's like chances of that are very slim.
Well, like, we need mentorship. You know, that there's nothing wrong with that. Having someone who's older and wiser to guide you and shape you, you know, that I think it's beautiful to live out family tradition and, you know, or faith traditions. You know, that these things shape who we are because we're social beings. You know, we're not meant to be individuals, you know, and be individualists. We are called and meant to be, you know, we're called to communion. And, but I think we do live in an age of, what's the word for it? Just like everyone wants to go viral.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to go viral at this point. And that fame only lasts for, you know,
Couple seconds.
Yeah, a couple seconds,
It's an
couple days,
instant
maybe a week.
gratification.
Yeah, I mean, it's so quick, you know, and but that's the path everybody wants, you know, and so if everyone's got that mentality of, oh, I just want to do something different just for the sake of this couple seconds of fame, you're kind of left with constant chaos. Because I mean, if you look at what the stakes are, they're constantly being bumped up. You know, to go viral, you have to do something just a little bit more edgy each time. You know, like what's the end goal of that?
When you know what's funny? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
it was, keep that thought. But there was a video that surfaced, I think it happened 2 days ago, but this guy on YouTube, he makes a living off of pranking people and like getting in their faces and being weird and whatever. And it was that, and he was non-stop pissing somebody off. And I think it was another YouTuber or something like that. But he kept like getting in his face, and he was abusing him and harassing him, and the dude pulled out a gun and shot him. That didn't kill him, but like the guy's getting in trouble for shooting in a public space, not the fact that he shot the guy. Like that's what he's getting in trouble for, because you see the video and he's clearly harassing him just to get views. And it's like, what next step? Like at that point, I mean, you could go as far as to say somebody's going to commit an act of terrorism to go viral. I mean, think about it. Like people.
9/11 went viral. We're still talking about it.
Wow.
I love it. Coming in hot. Patreon.
Listen, atta boy.
That was terrible. Was that terrible?
No, it was good.
That was that was a good
I
one.
just meant along those lines.
Listen, how you stuck the landing was perfect. 9/11 was
Went viral.
well. That's we're still talking about it today.
You're going to get the Navy SEALs like outside your door. Say it again, bitch. Say it again.
We'll make you go viral.
Yeah. You want to see viral, boy? But
I'm curious how much we keep that in.
what I was gonna say is, you know, what's funny is with all this social media.
Yep.
And everyone trying, like, social media, it's so easy to get other people's attention.
Yep.
It is the easiest it's ever been to get attention. And yet people are constantly, like, addicted and striving for it.
Oh, it's a
every
drug.
second.
It's
100%.
absolutely a drug. Yeah. It's weird to get addicted to something that you're not digesting, and yet at the same time you do consume social media. You do consume, you know, obviously attention too. So it's just interesting how it's a different form of consumption, and that it does become addictive, you know, like to your body. Which, I mean, you're sending off chemical reactions in your brain, so it makes sense. But like we do consume social media, all the attention. You know, it is a consumable drug.
Yeah.
Well, and even the way like shorts are manipulated so that like I watched a couple yesterday and they all did the exact same thing. Like right when it starts again, it kind of ties in well with how it ended. So you'll rewatch it and you're halfway through and be like, oh wait, it started over again.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, so it's like even designed
It's a loop.
to like manipulate you just to keep you on there watching.
100%.
I heard someone say that manipulation is probably the worst thing you could ever do to a human being. Because it's not always an obvious thing that's being done to that person. So that the receiver of the manipulation, they could be like in a manipulative marriage and never know it until like maybe one day they wake up and they realize it, and then they could spend the rest of their life trying to figure out, okay, what's real, what's not, what's good, what's not, what are good boundaries, what aren't good boundaries. You know, like you don't know. I thought that was interesting because like you're convincing the person that what you're doing to them is good, and you're manipulating them. Like you're forcing your way into their brain.
Yeah.
You're almost changing the way they think
Yeah.
without them knowing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so many consequences come from that manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you could manipulate the person to give away all your, all of their money to you, or to cut you in on a deal. Like you manipulate every aspect of this person's life. I think that's true. That manipulation is the worst thing you could do to somebody.
I was talking to somebody about that yesterday because he and I were discussing just traumas and someone's response to it, and obviously I'm not going to say who, but like we were discussing like, because he was like, yeah, I think this person is just like super damaged by something that happened in her past, but then but that same thing happened to me, but I didn't come out. I ended up on the opposite end of it. And I mean, I'll tell a quick story. I'm known for being long-winded, but I'll be quick. But I mean, I was in that same thing, manipulation. That's hits the nail on the head of like, it's one of the worst things you can do to somebody. But I was in an abusive relationship years ago. I wasn't the abuser. It was happening to me. And I know you're thinking, you really? Yep. But it was very emotionally and physically abusive. And and I came out on the other side of that. Like, I have to do whatever it takes to make whoever future partner I have to be, like, I have to make them happy all the time. And so it was probably the worst, the first year of my marriage was, like, my wife and I had to sit down because she couldn't understand what was happening because she kept catching me in what she called lies. And I was like, they're not, wait, was I lying? No, it was the trauma that I had experienced from the previous relationship of thinking that I can't have someone who's unhappy ever. And if it is, then it's all on me. But so like I was subconsciously manipulating every situation. And it was crushing her because she was like, I can't trust you. And I'm like, but I'm not lying. She's like, yeah, but you embellish around everything else to where it feels like you are at the end of the situation. And I feel like left in the dark because because you're so intent on me not being happy or me being happy that you sacrifice everything else around it.
Wow.
Everything else around in the situation. And so we started, I huge proponent of counseling. I think even if you're doing well, you should still continue to see counseling, marriage counseling, like a professional, and even if it's like twice a year, just sit down and talk with someone else in the room who's unbiased. But we started seeking counseling because I had to dig into who I created myself to, like the persona that I created subconsciously because I didn't want trauma anymore. But I became this subconscious manipulator that everything I did was calculated. Every word I said was calculated. Everything was disingenuous because I made sure that every single moment of her life was nothing but happiness. And she's like, that's not possible. Yeah. But yet, no, manipulation it'll tear your life apart.
Right. And that's a good example of like just how easy it is to flip extremes. You know, when you've been in a really bad situation, our tendency is to be like, all right, I'm going to do the exact opposite of
100%.
this, which also ends up being somewhat like the original situation.
Right.
Because it's different forms of manipulation, like you're saying.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that kind of ties into the phrase that we hear constantly, happy wife, happy life. Right? Well,
oh, yeah.
Shudders.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Shiver. Just,
What is it with you and making guttural noises into the microphone? Do you know how many times I got to bleep your ass out?
do you not like doing that? You love editing. You're welcome. I'm helping you get better at your craft.
There we go. He's helping you gain wisdom.
You know what that sounds like? Manipulation.
Except it's for your better.
Right.
But the whole phrase "happy wife, happy life," it's like obviously a relationship's a two-way street. So like, and you are called to sacrifice. Like everybody's called to sacrifice for the better of the other individual, but not for their happiness, because happiness is very fleeting.
It's an emotion.
Yeah, it's kind of a form of instant gratification. Now that doesn't mean happiness is bad. It's a gift to be happy.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between happy and joy, right?
Yep.
Joy is that deep, no matter what I'm going through, it doesn't matter if it's the biggest pain in my life or if this is the greatest moment of my life. Like, there is a sense of joy. It's so much deeper. There's root.
Yep.
Like, there's roots
Yeah.
in joy. Towards happiness, it's more surface level.
Well, and when most people use that phrase, it's generally used as like, oh, I just want to appease my wife so that I can do my thing, so
Yeah.
that she's not nagging me all the time. Where it's like, no, you're supposed to love your wife.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
you are one. It should be like you're working together, not like she just keeps coming bantering at me.
The
and I
old
just
ball
wanna-
and chain.
Right. So it's more like the attitude when people say that.
Absolutely.
It's like, it's problematic.
Oh, it's a negative positive or a positive negative, response to everything. It's like, and you're not doing it joyfully, like you were saying. Like, you're kind of getting up out of your chair, rolling your eyes. All right, honey, I'll go clean the dishes. But there's no sacrifice. I mean, you are, but you're grumbling.
There's no
Yeah.
intention.
It's not, I'm doing this because I love you. Or how about, why does she have to ask you for all these things? Whatever happened to being a servant, to your wife and to your family, and anticipating these things. If you have to always be asked for things, like in a job setting, you may not be considered for an advancement. If you have to be told to do everything and you don't anticipate and you don't volunteer, like, are you really a good employee? Are you really a good husband, a good father at that point?
Yeah.
A willing husband? Like, that's, I don't know. It's worth asking.
When actually, I feel like that kind of ties into wisdom. Like, that's a huge sliver of wisdom. The importance of being proactive,
Whoa.
not reactive.
Yep.
Because that's what, in a business, when you run a business, it's pretty much putting out one fire at a time.
Yeah.
But you become a better business owner and you become better at running your business if you consistently think, how can I keep fires from popping up?
Yeah.
And part of that is you have to go through experience to learn where fires can actually develop, like where problems come in. So part of that is going through experiences and, again, reflecting and learning from them. But it also, this is where the importance of a mentor comes in, because you get someone who's lived through that, someone who's gone through the day-to-day operations of running a business. I mean, it's with anything, a family. It's huge to have a mentor in someone who's teaching you how to be a good husband, someone who's teaching you how to be a good father,
Yeah.
someone who's teaching you how to be a good man. Like, you can't just learn that on your own. You can't just learn that from videos you see on YouTube. You have to actually have someone who's gone through it, someone you know in your heart, someone you've vetted as, this person is a great man. And then that's where it could even, how huge it would be to be transparent with that person. Hey, I would love, if you went up to that individual and said, hey, I would love it if you would just teach me how to be a man.
Yeah.
Like, that would do them so much good in someone else coming to them. And think about how good that would feel if someone came to you and said, I view you as a fantastic man. Can you please help me?
Well, and we all would love if someone were to do that to us, but yet everyone still has times where you're afraid to ask someone.
Yep.
And it's like, why?
Because the question in itself is, it's about as vulnerable as you can get, at least from a man's standpoint. Yeah. And we talked about this in the first episode, but you were like, women can just be like, can we just sit around and talk? Men can't. Men don't do that. I don't call any of you and you're like, no, I do because I'm a sappy piece of shit. But no, damn it,
Don't call yourself that.
I am a sappy person. Beep. Beep. But no, but like and that's just because I mean, God bless my dad for like not hiding that from me. When it matters, emotions are important.
Oh yeah.
Emotional connection is important, but it's like very rarely men won't be like, I'm gonna call you and we need to just talk. I mean, I do that all the time, but I'm secure in my masculinity. So
Well, I think, and that's what we were saying too. Like, men do need that, and so that like in your relationship with your wife or your fiance, your girlfriend, whatever, that you aren't just going to her like, I don't know, with no solution to the problem.
yeah,
Like, a woman wants to see a man who's like, not has it all together all the time, because obviously no one does, but like he has a direction, like he's taking the problem somewhere rather than just like I'm sitting here wallowing in this, have no idea where to go. It's like that's why you need other male friends to go to and be like, give me some advice on this, like what should I do, where should I go from here?
yeah,
Well, and two, like to your point, like it's true, guys don't just call each other up necessarily just a chit chat.
Yeah.
I mean, we do sometimes, but like what we need is, because
We're
guys
close.
are very active. Sometimes, you're going through a tough time, and maybe the best thing you could say to that guy is, "Hey, do you want to go get a beer?" And that's the invitation to sit down and talk. Hey, do you want to come over
you
for a
wanna
cigar?
smoke a cigar?
Yeah.
It's like, that's code word for like,
Right.
I'm having a
talk.
really crappy.
You want to
day.
go
Yeah.
fishing? Because
Right.
like
Oh my
if
gosh,
I was
yeah.
to tell you, hey, you want to go out in the middle of a lake and sit in a boat, that would
talk
sound
about our feelings.
that would sound so weird. But if you want to say, hey, I got this boat.
You have one paddle, I'll have the other.
You want to get really emotional.
But instead, what do? We're like, hey, let's go do this activity together, and
Yeah.
then see where things go, see where the conversation takes us. You
Yeah.
know, but we have to create, like, if you will, like a space for it, an openness for it.
You have to create a table for it.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah, an atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize the differences. Like, we don't have to do it the way, that women are, do it. Like, we need to find out how is it that guys talk, and then play to those cards.
Right. We were talking with we had an event last night at Lit Cigar Lounge, which is the reigning champ in our opinion of cigar lounges. Sorry guys. It's our bat cave. But we had an event there last night, and it was their grand opening of their official finalized space, because they moved 4 times and it was a whole thing. But they are kind of business partners with Luciano Cigars, and Luciano is the name of the man that started the company, and his daughter is the COO, and she was there last night, and we were talking about this, and one of my favorite question to ask anyone who is a cigar fanatic or even just starting out, what's the appeal? Why do you? And she said that, I mean, the most blissfully perfect answer. When you're around a glass of whiskey and a cigar, all your walls disappear. Because you're sitting and you talked about this in the first episode, but cultivating it. It's a cultivation. My favorite quote, and I play it every day in my head, is cigars have a propensity to create depth. Because there's so much depth within them. Right. So she kind of expanded on that, and she goes, it creates an atmosphere to where all your inhibitions are gone. Well, not all of them. You're not drunk, but you're just I'm sitting here with a person. I'm obviously invested because this is going to take at least half an hour, and that's if I smoke it real quick. Mm-hmm. And
that's if I'm Joseph Hill.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. How is half that cigar, by the way?
Well, you get into the final third.
This is great. It's
Yeah,
mellowed out a lot.
Yeah,
Cream.
super creamy.
A little bit of corn.
But
bread.
Yeah, she was just it takes your inhibitions away, and she was I grew up with it, and it was funny because she mentioned the first time she ever saw her dad or found out her dad was smoking cigars, And she goes, I had just gone through the DARE program at school. And she was like, I was devastated. I was like, Dad, you're going to die of cancer? And I'm not going to have you. And she's like, she cried for days until she understood that, like, well, no, cigars aren't inhaling. It's about the taste and it's about the quality. And there's also not 249 different carcinogens inside of it. And there's no filters and there's not pieces of frog legs. And yeah, if you smoke cigars, sorry, we look it up. It's bad. Anyway, like
cigarettes
or cigarettes. Cigarettes are bad. Cigars are amazing. Suck it, internet.
Yeah, I was confused there for a second.
No,
Frog
what's
leg?
no, it's not.
These
Rivet.
are some tasty frog legs.
But it was the most, and like she got emotional while talking about it because she was just like, this is something that everybody should experience because I don't care what you do as a profession. When it comes down to the nitty gritty, stop talking surface level. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you think that all of your worth is based on what you do and how you act every single day. No, it's who you are when all of it's gone.
Yeah.
One of my
Get past the small talk.
Right, get past the small talk. One of my favorite things, and I grew up in the Protestant church, but like
Do more big talk.
do more big talk. But I grew up in the Protestant atmosphere, and like one of their big things was always if God took it away, would you be okay? And it's like, who are you underneath everything? Are you solid? Are you foundational? Are you built on sand? Or are you built on rocks?
Yeah.
Are you built on concrete? Or are you built on movable earth? Right? And it's who you are in the midst of all of the struggle and underneath all the pain and all the success. And even, I mean, I'm friends with a couple of like multimillionaires, and all of them are like, I don't really care about the money. Like, yeah, I worked really hard for this, but I understand that my family comes first. Like one of my, somebody I hope to meet super soon, but Andy Frisella, like super successful guy, self-made. I want to say billionaire at this point.
I don't know.
But we follow him on Instagram, and every week he's in his backyard hanging out with his family. And it's like, who are you underneath it all?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we really want to be about is like all of this stuff should serve the ultimate purpose. It should serve your faith. It should serve your family. But we have a tendency to start confusing the thing that's serving with like the final end. Like, oh, make cigars and make whiskey, like more important than the thing it should be serving.
Yeah.
Which is the fraternity.
Right.
That, we talked about it in the first episode. The reason why we're here is because we have this fraternity.
Right.
There was no
cigars and
vetting
whiskey.
process or hazing. We just joined.
That's right.
It's more of
I didn't
a,
have to eat a
slight
goldfish.
hazing.
It's
I
more of a consistent hazing. The hazing never stops. But that's what all of this serves the higher purpose of going deeper into fraternity, because like what you said earlier, we are meant for communion.
Right.
And the only way you as a man can grow is if you find men who are above you, not that they're pulling you along, but you find men who are higher than you at certain aspects in life, so you guys at least have an equal distribution of growth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Because you become like the people you spend time with and talk
100%.
to.
Yeah.
So if no one's challenging you, it's just going to pull you down.
You show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm recently married. My wife and I look forward to starting a family, and I look forward to bringing cigars into my fatherhood.
Yeah.
Okay, Dad's smoking a cigar. That's a good time to go outside and talk to him. He's going to be sitting there for at least an hour. And just creating that space, that time, for talking. Because I'm not going to be really moving around a whole lot while I'm smoking. I might be cutting the grass, but that might be, that's a different cigar.
Right.
It's kind of
a
hard
throwaway
to talk
cigar.
to your dad when he's cutting the grass.
That's right. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. But,
So anyway, how's school?
That's right.
Dad, slow down. No.
Dad, I really need to talk about something.
I've got 68 more lines to cut.
The whole neighborhood can hear you.
But like when Dad sits down for a cigar, like I want that to be an invitation for quiet time, and for the kids to come outside.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's what you like need the most from a dad, I think. It's not even to hear anything specific. It's like just to see that he wants to spend time around you.
Yes, absolutely.
So even if he's sitting there smoking a cigar and like you're sitting around him or you're reading a book to your kids or whatever it is, like there's no magic words you need to say even. It's like,
no.
Are you around? Do you want to spend time with your kids?
It's that gift of presence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Never mind. Go. Someone else talk.
One other thing I was going to say about cigars is like we have a body and a soul. And if you want to like, get into a contemplative conversation with someone on a deeper spiritual level, you need some outward sign that will also represent that. And that's what cigars do. It's like, it is a contemplative thing. You have to slow down. You have to take your time.
Yeah.
That's
so
well
by
put.
doing that, like bodily, it allows you to get into like a deeper conversation. I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing I was going to say about cigars is like I've even thought about that. Like when I start my family, because the way I've heard about it is, think about humanity. Think about the history of humanity and how men way back used to have this rite of passage. And the Native Americans had it, the rite of passage, to where when the boys turned about 14, 15, there was this rite of passage to where the town or the village would send them off on an adventure on their own.
Like go kill a lion.
Yes,
Yeah.
bring me back the head. Yeah. And then it was this test. And the father obviously was there to help raise the son up to get to the point to where he could go on that rite of passage.
Yeah.
But what if you could use cigars as that rite of passage?
Yeah.
To around, you know what? If you're a father, you can dictate the best age.
Around 12 years old?
Long as they're still developing, why not test them real early? But it's have that rite of passage for your son to where once they get to a certain age, you can introduce cigars to them. And it's almost that invitation to spend that time with dad to become a better man.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have sons, that is your job as a man. Obviously, your job as the father is to raise your kids regardless of the gender. But especially with sons, it's there's this book called Wild at Heart by John Eldridge.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he
It's a great
talks
book.
about how and it's about the age when puberty kicks in,
Yep.
that especially boys, they switch because when they're born all the way up to about when they start going through puberty, they're always looking to their mother.
Yeah.
They're always looking for the nurture from the mother. And then by about 13, 14, if you're a late bloomer,
16.
sorry, you start looking to your father. Right. And that's when those questions on your heart start to come in, and you start to hear them, which is, am I good enough? Am I strong enough? Am I man enough? Right. And that's the only way you can find that out is by going to your father. And so introducing cigars as almost a quote-unquote rite of passage to where it's kind of like, listen, son, you're at an age to where now you need to start taking a little more responsibility. And you give the gift of responsibility along with the cigar. So the way that I thought about it is, what if you introduced more chores around the house with the cigar?
Yeah.
If you got to earn the cigar.
Wow.
The son has to earn the cigar. You want to earn it, you got to take a little bit more responsibility around the house.
Yeah.
And it's that rite of passage, because now you're not calling them to hunt the lion, right? So it's not a life or death thing, but you're slowly introducing responsibility so that way your son can become the best version of himself.
And that's like the thing he says in Wild at Heart, like the question that every man asks himself is, do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the rite of passage, the killing the lion, whatever, that doesn't make you a man, but it's like that outward sign of like, I, as an older person who knows what it means to be a man, I'm telling you, like, yes, you have what it takes. You are now ready. And like, just that, like, affirmation is like so huge.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's what the whole point of the rite of passage is, so the son or the kid who's becoming the man knows in himself that he is man enough, that he is strong enough, that he does have what it takes.
Right.
Because if you have, it's kind of, affirmation is great, and we, like you said, we're community-based individuals, and it's important, especially as a man, to have other men who are affirming you and who are motivating you and inspiring you.
Yeah.
But that can only take you so far. It's like me, when I lost 96 pounds in 14 months. I was 296 January 14th. This was a couple years back. I think it was 2017. And then December 20th, the same year, I was down to 200. So I lost
Nice.
96. Well, and then I got down to 189 in January. But
Yep.
I was severely overweight most of my childhood, and I had my parents, my grandparents, my brother, I had brothers, I had all of them telling me I need to stop doing what I'm doing because it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear that. I
Yeah.
didn't care.
Yeah.
So even though I was still working out, and by this time I was working out I was working out for about 3 years,
Yep.
but I was still gaining weight. And it finally, something in me clicked. And it was that moment to where I had to recognize I do have what it takes.
Yeah.
And it's the importance of that rite of passage. Like,
yeah.
it has to come from within, and you
Yeah.
have to recognize it yourself. You can have all men in the world telling you you're great, but if you don't believe it, it means nothing.
Yep.
Right. Well, and like killing that lion is an outward sign of your internal disposition. Because I think a big difference between a man and a boy can only really be cared for and think of himself, and a man is able to think of others and take care of others. So that the killing the lion, and we'll just put that in quotation marks, that idea of killing the lion is proof that now you are capable of defending, killing that deer to provide dinner for your family. You're able to risk your own life for somebody else. So that is a rite of passage. And with a cigar, you're telling your son, okay, you are ready now to engage in these deep conversations with people.
Yeah.
You are mature enough. Something I want to do is, when my when a son is born, I want to buy a box of cigars and smoke the first one, like when he's born.
Yep.
Smoke, and then let's see,
You're so generous to your son, smoking all his cigars.
I know.
I want to buy him a box of cigars and smoke
so
it
that I can smoke
every birthday of his.
Guess what? Suck it. It's mine.
So
It represents you, though.
One day, son.
that's right.
But not this box.
This is just an excuse to your mother so I can buy more cigars. No, so smoke the first one when he's born.
When mommy asks, it's yours.
And then when he turns 18, give him the box of cigars. And
It'd be empty by that point.
No, like save them for him. But it's something that I'm saving for him. And then when he turns 18, that's his rite of passage.
I love that.
And I
That's
give
awesome.
him
I
that
love
box of
that.
cigars.
Yeah.
And then we smoke the second one when he graduates college.
Yeah.
The third one, or a third one together when he gets married, or gives himself to a vocation. So
Yeah.
it could be priesthood, religious life, marriage, and then the rest are his to
Right.
enjoy. But then that's something that I've invested in for 18 years.
Yeah.
This box of cigars, and then I give it to him, as a gift.
Yeah.
And that becomes something special for us.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think would be neat. It's
I love that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
It'd be like a little gauntlet. All right,
Yeah.
son, these are yours now.
I kind of want to circle back, if everyone's all right, to the Okay. The communal aspect of. So if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, like if you don't have a God that you believe in or whatever, you look at it from an evolutionary or scientific standpoint, all of biology requires other beings to exist. Everything in this life is communal. You cannot do it alone. And if you're like, well, I'm single and I made my own business and I'm 45 and I've made a millionaire. Yes, but you needed other beings to help get you to that point. Or, I mean, even a plant, it requires water, which is from the sky, and it requires sun, which, you know, like everything is built in within itself. And then if you think about it, I can see your wheels turning, you got something good to say.
No, you sparked it. So,
but if you think about it from a faith standpoint, even at the creation of the world, God had all three: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There, God in Himself is a community, and so He does everything communally. I mean, oh, dude, I heard one of the best descriptions of like the three crosses on Golgotha, where a lot of people think about, and it went into like, if I start singing, "Don't Stop
Believing.
Yeah, there you go. So like, you want to finish? Please sing, and don't speak it. But like when you finish that, right? Well, a lot of people think like, you know, some of Jesus' final words were, oh God, why hast thou forsaken me?" But He screamed it out because He knew the Hebrews in the crowd could finish that psalm. He was quoting Psalm 22. And He knew that they knew how that finished, because the end of that psalm, it starts with, oh God, why hast thou forsaken me? But it ends with, thou hast not forsaken me. Thou hast not left me. And so He was speaking out to them. He didn't need to say that. And then three crosses, like people think of like, oh, it's the thief and the murderer that are next to Him. No, it actually represents Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He was there the whole time, all three crosses. And so, but anyway, back to the communal thing, like, it's everything in all of creation is built on a community. It's built on a communal thing. I specifically remember my like rite of passage moment. So my grandparents own 180 acres in southeast Missouri. And so I had kind of half my childhood, I grew up there. And I remember the day where I felt like a man. I was like 9 or 10 years old, and we went down for we always go down on Sundays to just have a big family home-cooked meal.
Yeah.
And I remember my great-grandfather came over, my grandpa, my dad, my uncle. They were all there, and they walked in the room in hunting gear and a shotgun. And shotguns. And my grandpa handed me a BB gun, and he goes, "You're coming with us this time." And for 3 hours, we hunted quail together. And I watched the dogs, like, it like, point out the quails and, like, you know, pointer, like, Weimaraners and pointer dogs, you know, and it, like, and I felt like I didn't shoot a damn thing, but I felt like such a man.
That's awesome.
Because it was my rite of passage. It was like, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. We hunt, we kill, we provide meat for our family. You want to eat tonight? We got to go get it. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my rite of passage, because it took, awesome. Well, and more of like a backstory. So like my biological father took off when I was a month old. And so, and a year and a half later, my mom married my dad, and the only dad, he's always dad. Like the other guy's a sperm donor, but but I remember that, like, being a part of, like, I understood that it took that community to raise me as a man, because he was an outsider. He wasn't a part of our family until he was, right? And so, and then fast forward to, like, recently, to where and I went into this a tiny bit in the first episode, but, like, I used to fight my dad on everything, and I was a rebel, and I was a, you know, troubled kid and whatever. I caused a lot of junk, but I've gotten deeply, and like what cigars are for you guys, and you've kind of integrated me into the world of cigars, but what cigars are to you guys is whiskey for me. Is I don't buy it to collect it. I buy it to enjoy it. And my dad kind of picked up on that. And so it was about 3 months ago, and I went over to his house, and he had a bottle of Blanton's that was specifically picked and given to him. And I was like, where did you get this? Like, and he goes, and I was like, can I have some? And he goes, no. I was like, jerk. Like, and he goes, no. When you have some time, and when I have some time, you and I are going to sit together.
Yeah.
And we're going to enjoy it and talk.
That's awesome.
And that was like a, whoa. Like he sees me as a man and he wants to sit with his son and just enjoy this together because he understands my enjoyment of it.
Yeah. Well, and he wants to get to know you.
Right.
You know, you think about that, like fathers and sons, they don't know each other. You know, that takes time.
Right. One raises the other, and you know
Right.
them as a child.
Right.
And you know them as the one that you're trying to raise properly.
Yeah.
But it takes that moment of, I want to know the man you. Because, I mean, I've been out of his house now for 4 years, and so, you know, he wants to get to know me. Like, we're going, I won't get emotional, but, like, we're going golfing on Monday. I don't think I've ever spent one-on-one time with my dad for as long as it's going to be in the next couple days when we go on Monday. But I'm very much looking forward to it because
awesome.
I want to know my dad as a man too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same, it goes back to that like communal raising of, like it's kind of a mixture of both. It's the rite of passage, but the rite of passage comes through the communal learning of each other.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I want to circle back to something you said, but tie into what you said, because so you were saying how you have to like own it yourself, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much people do, you know, try and make you a man. Like, you have to like own
You
it.
have to come to that realization yourself. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So my wife and I have been listening to this one podcast, this couple talking about raising kids.
You listen to other podcasts?
I do.
All right.
Too many. But this couple was saying every kid, you know, like when you're 1 through 7, you just kind of need to be nurtured, especially by your mom more than anyone. But then around like 9, 10, those like before your teenager years, you are like, you just want approval from your parents left and right. And that's also the age when a lot of kids are like ignored by their parents.
Yeah.
And then once you're a teenager, especially like 17, 18, you're kind of like, screw my parents. Like, I don't, you know,
Yep.
they messed all these things up, blah, blah, blah.
They don't
And you're
know
like,
anything.
you're rebellious towards them. You no longer are seeking their approval. You're kind of pushing back against it.
Yeah.
And they were saying that's the age when a lot of parents try to like develop a good relationship with their kids. But they missed that window when they were 10, 11, 12, when their kid was like begging for attention
Oh
and
my
affection and
gosh.
affirmation. So they were saying those are the years you have to just like go all wild at heart. Like, take your kids rock climbing and like tell your sons like, wow, good job with that. Like, go to their sports games, you know, all of those things. And then when they're 17, you've already built that relationship and they're not going to push back against you as much.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be like, oh, my dad likes me, he likes spending time with me. And so then it allows you to like accept that rite of passage a lot more easily, I think.
Yeah. My son is pretty non-vocal about his emotions. He acts well, and he's brilliant and he's smart, but he has something. He's not good at conveying what he needs through speech, and so it's always been a struggle. My son's 8, and it's always been a struggle to understand what he needs, and it's always been a struggle to be. It's always been a struggle to be a good father to him. And I was working at the computer, because real estate and this, and like all that stuff. And he came up to me one day, and he goes, and he just sat next to me. And he was there for a good half an hour, just watching what I was doing. And I said, "What's up, buddy?" And he goes, dead in my eyes. And he goes, "Can we do something together?" And I dropped everything, and I was like, "Whatever you want to do, man. Whatever you want to do." And it's that, and it ties into that, like, sorry. It ties into that, like, they're begging you for that time. Don't miss that time. And a lot of children cannot communicate it. They just, because they'll act out. Because that's what my daughter does, is when she wants attention but can't get it because we're too busy, she'll act out. My son stays completely silent. He's super well behaved. But when he wants you, he's like, "Can we do this today, please?" And that's like recent of it. Like
That's
within the
super
last
cool.
6 months,
Wow.
he has gained his voice to talk to me. And then, all right, I've told a lot of stories. This will be my last one. No, it won't. But, but we pray every night together. We do roses and thorns of every day. So we do like a, what was a bad point of your day, but what was the best part of your day?
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling a story, because my kids attend PSR, and he was like, I think I heard God's voice for the first time. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, it was after PSR, and all the kids were going crazy. But I felt like I heard God say, I would enjoy it if you stood out and you were behaved.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
He's 8?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, that's amazing, dude. What did it sound like? And he said, it sounds like you.
Wow. That's huge.
That voice sounded like you. And I was like, I spend all this time thinking that I'm a crap father. And he says something like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing something right. But yeah, it's the importance of embracing and understanding, because we're always so focused on what the rest of the world needs from us. Because as men, it's and we're going to take a lot of people off by saying this, but like, there's just more on our shoulders. There just is, culturally, societally, within your family, like on men's shoulders, there's just more. And so we're constantly focusing on who and what and how to behave towards the outside world, that
Yes.
you need to focus that much attention within your family as well.
Well, it's like we were saying earlier, like, don't confuse, like, 'cause ultimately your job or whatever it is meant to serve your family.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be so easy to, like, put that above family. Oh, no, I can't right now, son. I'm doing X, Y, Z. But it's like, those are, like, the moments that, like, that's what it means to be a father.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you miss those, it's like,
When I think all this, because while you were talking about all this, this quote just keeps ringing in my ears. If you want to see the face of God, look at the nuclear family. And not only the nuclear family, also look at the Holy Family, but any nuclear family, right? You have the father, you have the mother, you have the child. The child is born because the husband and the wife loved each other so much that love was so powerful it produced a whole nother life.
Right.
And so you have the three beings. You have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Just like in the Holy Family, right? You have Joseph, who was the shadow of the Father.
Yeah.
You had Mary, who is overshadowed by the Holy Spirit. And then you have the Son, which is the Word of God made flesh.
Right.
And I think that ties in, and not only that, but it ties into the importance of community. I mean, from the very moment of creation, God created Adam, and yet God created Adam very good, right? It was all very good.
Yeah.
And yet Adam was doing his God-given mission, which was to name and to watch over his creation. And then God said, it is not right for man to be alone. From the very beginning of creation. And then he created Eve, who was a worthy partner, who was a worthy...
Yep. Keep going. Sorry.
No, it was a worthy partner.
Yeah.
And so from then, and from that moment, obviously, Adam and Eve didn't have any kids in the garden, but that's where God stood as that third person in the family. It was God, Adam, and Eve. So you had the three from the very beginning.
Oh, can I say one thing really quick? I just heard this. Actually, my wife told me this the other day. So Eva was her name. And then what is the first thing that the angel says to Mary at the Annunciation? Ave, which is the opposite, which is Eva spelled backwards. So it's like Mary is the new Eve, just like Jesus is the new Adam.
Oh, wow.
So it's like flipping that whole story on its head. Like, they were fallen. Now the Holy Family is going to be perfect and undo what Adam and Eve did.
Yeah. And actually, the first words that he uses in Scripture to describe the woman is we must make a helper suitable. Yep. That Hebrew helper suitable is ezernegdo. And that word ezer, he actually uses to describe himself later on when he's talking about his relationship with himself, so God, and the people of Israel. So the first time he mentions woman, he uses the same word that he uses to describe himself.
That's cool.
And our modern ears want to take that as like, oh, you're trying to say that she's supposed to be like the servant of the man. It's like,
No, it's a helper suitable.
And that was understood until like 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Suddenly we had to question everything and rebel against every tradition that ever existed.
Well, in our overly individualized culture, like you were saying, like no plant can just be an isolated plant on its own and do anything.
Right.
Right. So like people think like, oh, I'm this self-made man. It's
Powerhouse.
like, no, you're not. Like there are a million things contributing to your quote unquote success.
Yeah.
Well, and even think about it. Flowers are pollinated by bees.
Yeah.
Right.
You have bees land, and then they pollinate and cross-germinate with other flowers, and that's how your kind spreads if you're a flower.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that was weird. You just made a face that made it weird.
Well, I thought about the way I kind of edited that and how I stuck the landing, and I was like,
You just
way to go, Dan.
It was good. It
You
was
really
good.
did it.
It was good until your expression was like, no.
Great job, Dan. 8 out of 10.
Something to shoot for.
Yeah. It's something better.
Yeah.
You can always be better.
Is there any moment in any of your guys? Was there ever a moment in your lives where like you were like, there was one thing that either someone said to you or, I think you shared it with me recently, where if you do something, do it well. Like that was a huge piece of wisdom that kind of surfaced for you and you carry with you. Is there anything that any of you guys like have that you don't ever let leave you, if you will? Like a snippet of wisdom or something your father said to you, or you know what I mean? So like for example, like for me, I was going through, I mean, one of the multitudes of problems that I had in the last 20 years, but like, I was talking to my dad once because I used to have like crippling anxiety. And something funny about anxiety, just psychologically, anxiety is just you caring too much about a past that you can't change or worrying too much about a future that you can't control. But my dad sat me down and he was like, ask yourself one question of every situation you will ever be in. Can you do something to control it, or at least help control it? If yes, do that thing to the best of your ability. If no, let it go. Because it's not worth fretting about if you can't do anything about it. Like, you can't fret over the sun rising. It's going to happen. You can't fret over gaining age. Daniel, that is probably the sexiest thing I've ever seen. Daniel is sitting in a leather chair with a match lighting a pipe. That is...
It's a good look.
That's such a good look on him.
You wear it well.
You wear it so well. Well, yeah, that was something that my dad always said to me. He was like, if you can control it, do it, and do it to the best of your ability. If you can't, let it go. Mm-hmm. It's not worth hemming and hawing over.
Well, and that's also where like anger comes from too.
Yeah.
It's like feeling like you should be able to control something that you can't control.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But yeah, is anybody?
One thing that stuck with me, which wasn't too long ago, was I guess a little over 2 years ago. But at our wedding, the priest said in his homily to me and my wife, he was like, "You two are very idealistic people," and he was like, "Never lose your ideals." Because like I think the more you go through life, the easier it is to lose your ideals.
Yeah.
To stop shooting for something great because it feels like it's impossible.
Yeah.
So that's something, I mean, even 2 years into marriage is, all kinds of stuff about life are hard and challenging, but I've just really like kept that vision of like, no, I'm going to keep striving for this thing, even though of course you'll never reach perfection, but just having something to strive for is, I think, so important.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really grow up similar to you, Adam. I didn't really have my father in the picture for a lot of my life. But something that I learned from the age of 12, which is when my dad was more or less out of the picture, was just learning to push through things and learning how to push through it. Like, it's not just grinning and bearing it and just, kind of pretending like everything's fine, but learning how to, just how to process the difficult things that are coming up. And I remember the day when my mom pulled my twin brother and I into the room and just kind of explained the situation, everything with my dad, and something just woke up in me, like this desire to serve and to take care of my siblings and to help my mom in any way that I could.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, okay, what do I need to do from right now? And I remember going downstairs, and there was some movie on the TV that my younger siblings were watching. I just remember sitting down, and I just sat down, next to one of my sisters, and we just watched a movie together. And there was just something about that of, okay, I could have gone to my room and felt sorry for myself and thought, how could this have happened? Lord, what the heck is happening here?
Yeah.
But instead, like, God gave me the grace to just, I don't know, like internally, like my posture just changed. And I just remember feeling just broader all of a sudden, like internally. And I went downstairs, and from that day forward, my brother and I started looking for good men to bring into our lives. And I think my rite of passage, or that gauntlet, was when I turned 21. We invited over all of the men and priests in our lives that had been influential. And I think we had like 33 men in our backyard, and we all were smoking cigars and drinking scotch. And I just remember at one point looking around, and the age range was all over the place. We had some guys who were in their 80s, 50s,
Yeah.
I just remember looking around thinking, wow, God really took care of us
Yeah.
from such a young age. And just feeling, and just that presence of being surrounded by all these guys was just, that to me was like this moment of, okay, I'm a man now, and it was when I hit, 21, but I had felt this developing from the age of 12. That was just like this picture moment of, like, that's a defining moment for me moving forward. But yeah, I didn't really grow up with the benefit of having like consistent advice from a father, because I got it from so many different people.
Right. But then
Well, and we've talked about that a lot. Like,
Yeah.
when you're in a bad situation like that, you have two options. Like, you can either become bitter and kind of go down a similar path, or you can be like, all right, I don't want to be like that, and I'm going to rise to the occasion and be step up and be a man.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think 12 years old is when I started becoming a man, because in that moment is when I chose to serve, and look to others to care for them.
Yeah.
Like I looked outward instead of inward. And I think that was both a grace from God, but also I think that came from the formation I received in the faith, from my parents. My dad did a lot of, bad things, but he did cultivate the faith into all of us as well. So he did live out his role, I think, as well as he could. He was a damaged man too, and hurt people.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but we all do it. But that's why I think too, like, even a bad example can be a good example. It just depends on how you take it.
Right.
Like, are these things, crippling you, or are they making you stronger? And it's really up to you.
Yeah.
To decide how you take those things. And sometimes you have to wrestle with it for a while. Sometimes, the hurts will hurt you for a long time, and then all of a sudden it's when somebody else is going through the same thing, and you can take those you can take what you've been going through and suddenly flip the switch and use it to help them. Well, now all that stuff wasn't wasted.
Yeah.
It all means something now.
Yeah.
But if you become embittered and you're like, oh, good luck, kid, and figure it out on your own. I did.
Right.
Nobody helped me
gosh.
along.
Yeah.
Well, then you're right. No, nobody's going to help you along.
Right.
You just missed an opportunity to take all of your suffering and do something with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like the knock and the door will be open to you type attitude. Like, you went out and sought, like, I do need to find good men in my life and role models. But if you had just been like, sat back and been bitter or whatever, that stuff probably wouldn't have just shown up in your lap. You had to go looking
Right.
for it.
Well-
And
Yeah.
because you did,
Yeah.
you received it.
Well, and even if it did, I might not have recognized it.
Yeah,
I might have
right.
turned away or, missed it. It might have been a missed
Yeah,
opportunity.
you wouldn't have been looking for
Yeah.
it.
And
Right.
I give my mother a lot of credit because she really encouraged Michael and me to go out and seek these things. I remember her, one of the greatest pieces of advice she gave me was surround yourself with successful fathers since you didn't really have one.
Oh, wow.
And that was powerful. That was a big piece of, encouragement and advice from her.
Yeah.
You don't have a father in your life. Go find one.
Yeah.
Because we all have a dad,
Yeah.
but a father is something I think a little bit deeper.
Oh, yeah. 10 times over.
Yeah.
So
And
even though that was
yeah.
a bad situation, it turned into a rite of passage for you.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
Absolutely.
And it's
Which is,
because
that's so cool.
yeah, and it's because you let it. And I think like you just kind of described, at least in my mind, like the difference between depression and sadness. So like sadness is an emotion that you feel, but you get past it. But if it's depression, then it's kind of your body going, I don't want to play this character anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And a lot of people, it's just kind of a hot take, and I hope I don't piss a lot of people off, but I'm a big proponent of therapy, but I'm not a big proponent of medication. I'm not. Unless you have a diagnosed schizophrenia or something. Yeah, you should probably take some meds. But don't take meds to stop your crippling depression. You talk to people and you choose to become somebody different, because that's and as coming from someone who spent a great deal of a good year and a half of my life just overtly depressed, and it's because I chose to be I don't want to be this person that I've been playing. But then on the other side of that, it's and you chose immediately, but it was you got up and you were you're right, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to play this card anymore, so I'll create a new one.
Yeah. Well, and Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot of course there is genuine depression, but you need to make sure you're doing all the things you can, because sometimes it could just be oh, you're not taking care of yourself physically, or you don't have good friendships, or whatever. You're not actually trying your best in your job.
Yeah.
First do all of those things well, and then if there still is depression, you might have genuine depression.
Yeah.
But we probably confuse depression a lot with no, your life is just, maybe you're just going through something terrible.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're depressed just because you're going through a horrible situation. That means you're going through a horrible situation.
Right.
So you're saying that could be sadness.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're depressed.
And I think a lot of people take sadness and we talked about this a little bit, but a couple months ago, I think, but we were talking about how decisions based on emotion are one of the most detrimentally life crippling things you can do, because an emotion is fleeting. And so, but I think that's where a lot of people's depression, that's going to take a lot of people off depression. But there's a big difference. If you choose your sadness as your persona, then
Right.
then you're depressed.
Right.
Well,
if you label yourself I am a depressed person, then it's it's going to be so much harder to get out of it.
Yep.
Well, if depression is a sickness, then sadness would be the symptoms of you feeling like you're coming down with a cold.
Right.
So, when your body starts feeling achy and you think you're fighting something, what do? You get rest. You take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You build yourself up to fight off getting sick, right? But then if you do get sick, so if you do become depressed, then Grayson, you were talking about this, before. There are things you can do to get undepressed. One, accept, okay, I'm depressed, but I can get better. This is temporary. This doesn't have to define the rest of my life. But if you say, okay, I'm just depressed, that's the end of it, well, then you're probably going to be depressed for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And be anxious and nervous. But if you think of it as, okay, this is temporary. I can get through this. I can grow through this. This can be temporary. Then there's hope.
Right. Well, and it goes back to that snippet of wisdom that my dad gave me, which was, in every situation, take control of the things you can.
Right.
It's take control of the things you can and do it to the best of your ability. Don't just hang on to it, because then it just turns into baggage that's in the back of your mind. It's take it head on and do something with it, because you can control this. And there are people, and I will backtrack a bit, but like there are people that cannot control their depression because they have done everything they can.
Yes.
They have done. I'm fairly wealthy. My family's happy. Like everybody I'm in charge of is provided for, but I'm still sad. Yeah, then seek. You might actually be like clinically depressed.
Right.
But confusing sadness with depression is confusing action with inaction.
Right. Which is why like psychology is such a complex thing. It can't just be like, oh, you show up, talk to me for 10 minutes, tell me about your symptoms, and then I give you medication.
Yep.
Like that is not empowering the person at all.
No.
Like instead if they're like, all right, how's your physical health? How's your mental health? How are your relationships? And if you're like, no, all of that's great, and I'm still like genuinely stuck in this cloud of depression, then it's like, all right, they're probably something genuinely off.
Yeah. Genuinely off, or something that we need
But
to
that
dig
should be
deeper.
like a last resort type
Right.
of thing.
Exactly. 100%. You haven't talked in a while.
And
Is that a problem?
Dan, you haven't said anything in like 10 minutes. This is unusual.
Are you depressed?
Do you need medication?
Here you go. Here's
No,
a
I
cigar.
Yeah. Here's your medication.
Here's your medication.
Do you need a tissue? I think, and I agree with you. I don't like how medication heavy our society has gotten.
Yeah.
Because you go see, like you said, you go see a therapist, you talk to him for 10 minutes, and then the doctor just pushes you off by giving you a prescription. Like, there is no digging deeper. There's no finding the root cause of your
Yeah.
sadness.
Yeah.
It's
We're a Band-Aid culture.
exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's, you give them medication, which numbs the functionality of your mind,
Yep.
so you don't feel the sadness as much, or if at all. So, yeah, like you said, you're sticking a Band-Aid so you don't see it. But then guess what? If you get an infected wound, it's just going to keep getting worse until you do something about it.
Yeah.
Even like Tylenol, it's like that's not fixing the problem. That's just numbing the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the problem is still there, whatever's causing the headache or whatever.
Right, which is
Right.
why it requires rest, why it requires cultivation of yourself.
Yeah. So I shared, when I was 12, I think that was a turning point for me of becoming a man, that kind of that gauntlet period. Well, why don't you guys share? We can start with you, Grayson. Like, what was like a turning point for you when you started feeling like, okay, I'm a man. These are my responsibilities. Was there like a turning point in your life?
Not as much of a dramatic one. I mean, I feel like it was like smaller, I don't know, maybe more incremental things for me.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the biggest one was like going off to college. I was the first one to like leave the house, and I don't know, I went all the way to Florida for college. So it was like, that was like a big thing. And especially with my dad, like he's always been like, I always feel like he's had confidence in me and like just shown that like not treating me like, oh, like overly worried, like, oh, you're not going to be able to do this well, but just like this, I don't know, like confidence, like, oh no, you're going to do really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, and like that's really affirming just to have that kind of like silent confidence. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I can't really think of a big dramatic moment.
And I mean,
Marriage feels like that too, like that was a big
sure.
turning point, obviously.
Yeah. But I don't think it always has to be a dramatic, defining moment. I mean, I think, like you said, Grayson, I think marriage can be, it should be, hopefully a big eye-opener. Like, oh, wow, okay, now if everything else I haven't done well, I'm now married, I need to, really step
Kind
into
of
this
forced
role.
to do things well now.
Yeah,
You know?
right. Or at least try.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it can be incremental, just little steps every day.
Yeah.
What about you, Dan? Was there a defining moment or a big moment in your life that you realized I'm a man or I'm moving in that direction?
For me, it was definitely losing weight. I mean, being pre-diabetic at age 14.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the doctor said when I walked in.
Whoa, boy.
But good night.
You know this is
But
I was actually told this once. I walked into the doctor's office. I was like 14. The doctor was like, the scale only goes up so high. I was like, thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
You maxed it out. Well done.
The
This
scale
is a
just-
pediatrician's office, dude.
You step on the scale says, nope.
It says, "Get off of me." You're
You're like, I
Ouch.
guess you need to upgrade.
You just
Call
you
the
just
zoo.
hear, I can't breathe.
Call the zoo. Get the scale for the elephants.
But yeah, it was for me. It was losing weight because I mean, again, being pre-diabetic at 14, I didn't care, and partly it was because I was I was depressed because
Yeah.
I hated myself.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Every time I looked in the mirror, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without crying
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
And
I get that.
Finally-
just avoiding that contact with that eye contact
Yeah.
with yourself. Yeah.
yeah, well, it wasn't even just eye contact. I couldn't look at all
Yeah.
at anywhere without crying. And this is a plug for Andy Frisella, but it was a first form and supplement superstore commercial that because at the time I was working out for about 3 years and just kept gaining weight. By the age of 21 was when I was 296,
Yeah.
and I was working out 3-4 times a week. But then I'd go eat a full extra large Emo's pizza by myself.
Atta
And that was just dinner. And so I recognized I was working out 3 to 4 times a week, and yet I looked at a supplement superstore commercial and these people were gassed. They were extremely heavily breathing, like me trying to go upstairs, except I wasn't they were doing battle ropes. They were lifting weights. They were. And I was like, well, when I work out, I don't look anything like that. And then finally, I did it pretty unhealthily, honestly. I mean, losing 96 pounds in 14 months, that's not
insane.
healthy.
Yeah, that's nuts, dude.
But I stopped eating near as much, and that's where I started. I took the small step to take
Yeah.
a little bit more control over my diet, and I started shedding weight. And it was honestly from January to June that year, I went from 296 down to 252. And then I remember I was 252. June 14th was the day I started with this one trainer who eventually ended up becoming my boss. And then from June 14th to December 14th, I went from 252 to 200. Then December 14th to January 20th, I think, the next month, I went down to 189. And then I was like, I'm too skinny. But it was me taking control of my diet. It was me taking control and responsibility of my health. It was me. Now, ironically, I did it unhealthily. When you stand up at work and you stand up and your vision starts to go black, and the reason why you don't pass out is because you were holding onto a fence post at work, not healthy. Don't recommend it. But it was me being able to kind of be a man and take responsibility of my actions.
Yeah. And you probably wanted to hear at the time, or maybe you didn't, but what you needed to hear was you can do something about this, which demands you taking responsibility. But our culture today is oh no, there's nothing wrong with you. We'll just affirm you as you are.
Yeah.
Which in the moment seems nice because it takes away the pain and the admittance that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But in the long term, it's just perpetuating the problem.
Yeah. And it was, and see, that was what I was talking about earlier with it has to come from within. Because I had my brother making fun of me for being overweight, which I also think that kind of slight bullying helped a lot. Because part of him bullying, it wasn't out of malicious intent. It was him saying, you can be better, but you are still a tubby custard. So you can do something about it.
Your brother's an asshole.
This is why you need siblings.
That's right.
But
Dude, yeah.
think about how many stories you've heard of people saying, well, I was bullied, and then it awakens something in me. I'm not condoning bullying, but what I am saying is I feel like bullying can be turned into a way of bettering yourself, not in the terms of what society wants or thinks, but people will always point out indiscrepancies with who you are.
Yeah.
Like, that's just human nature. But
Yeah.
I think you can turn it around into something good. So when I had my family, some of my family, and people in high school bullying me,
Yeah.
my nickname in high school was Muffin Top for a reason.
Nice.
But, and so like,
harsh.
when you have things like that happen, you can take it and turn it and
Right.
reflect upon it and go, why are people calling me Muffin Top?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the muffin top above your pants.
Yeah.
Maybe you can change something about that.
Yeah.
And so, and
Which,
that's
yeah,
where-
obviously bullying's not good, but it's probably better than the other extreme, which is like, oh no, you're perfect.
it's so
Yeah.
much.
Oh
way
my
you are.
gosh.
Yes,
Why are
absolutely.
fat people heroes today? Sorry.
No, the,
It's true. Like,
Well-
we idolize, like, yeah, you can be completely overweight and die at the age of 40 because you can't walk up steps. That's okay. You're fine the way you are. No, you're not. That's not taking care of
did you
yourself.
See Luke Combs on Joe Rogan, like he was talking about like, because he's very overweight, and he's like, I know it, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And like, no matter how many people would lie to him and be like, oh no, you're perfect just the way you are. He knows deep down, like, no, I don't want to be this way. Like, I want to change.
Yeah.
And I think everybody does. Everyone
Yeah.
who like sees themselves as unhealthy, I think if they were true to themselves, they would recognize they're not happy with where they're at.
Yeah.
Like for me, I was unhappy with where I was at, and I was using food to try to literally fill that hole inside me.
Yep.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I think not everybody, but I know there are other people out there that do the same.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize there's a discrepancy with inside you. Food's not helping.
Yeah.
Right.
It's making it worse. And so it calls upon you to, I mean, regardless what gender you are, to kind of step up and take because if you can't take responsibility for yourself, you can't take responsibility for anybody
Right.
else. It's that old adage of, if your house isn't in order, how can you expect to take care of someone else's?
Right.
Right.
Well, and it goes back to too, like what we were saying with depression. Like, I'm sure there are some people who genuinely like are doing everything they can and still are finding it hard to like battle weight or something like that. It's like, okay, yeah, like maybe you broke both of your legs or something, and like you genuinely, there's not much you can do.
You have a thyroid, like your thyroid is actually dysfunctional.
Right.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is why
yeah,
you
yeah.
shouldn't go around like judging every person like, oh, I don't know. You should be changing your lifestyle, blah, blah, blah.
Weak.
But we should have as a general principle, like, you should be doing, like, trying to fight against something.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, and that's I can't remember who said it, but and I'm butchering the line too, so take it with a grain of salt. But it's borderline. The phrase goes, "The biggest battle is always the one within yourself."
Yeah.
If you are not fighting against yourself, how can you help other people battle their fights?
Yeah.
Right.
Because
right.
it doesn't matter how old you are always going to be battling yourself as long as you are above the ground.
Yeah.
And it's when you take responsibility and say, I'm going to push back. I'm going to fight back.
Yeah.
That's when that kind of, I think that's when everything changes.
Yeah. Well, it is, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? If you hang on to any, it's these. Love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And people are like, yeah, that's the golden rule. Treat others like I want to be treated. No, it's so much deeper than that. I can treat somebody how I want to be treated, and I can still feel like shit. Like, I don't really care.
Treat
But-
others the way that you should be treating yourself.
Right. Like, love your neighbor as yourself. If you have no internal love, if you have no internal structure, if you have no thought towards, I need to be the best version of me so that I can love others to the greatest extent.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. It's that internal, like, you have to have, like you were saying, like Peterson talks about, like you have to structure and you have to sit and ruminate on where am I lacking and where can I pick up, because at that point, and if it's all, you know, coincidental and everything within yourself, then you're like, okay, now how much of this can I give to others?
Yeah. Right.
Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was a defining moment for you when you felt like you were becoming a man and moving in that direction?
I've been thinking about it while he was talking, and it's an extremely emotional story, so I'm going to give the abridged version so that I don't get emotional. But wisdom came from my younger brother.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was in the midst of my abusive relationship. I was a father at 24, unexpectedly to twins, and I just thought, well, this is my life, and I turned on the robot. And to go down the medication line, I was on Adderall for 17 years because I was told when I was young, you have ADHD, you need this. And I realized getting older that it was not necessary because it was dampening everything else. And so I went off of it. And that's when I realized that my brain had to kind of realign itself and try to create its own dopamine. And I can't use medication to feel happy. And I can't, and so I was in this struggle and I was in this relationship, and I was just like, well, I'm stuck here because I have kids with her and I can't leave, and I have to be responsible because I can't be like my biological father. I can't leave. I cannot leave her. Mm-hmm. And so my brother at 19 years old, just finished high school, going into his first year of college. He pulled me into his bedroom, and my brother's not an emotional guy at all. He's a lot like my dad. He's just like, he's very wise and he's very kind and he's very generous, but he's not emotional. And he pulled me into his room and he started crying. And I was like, dude, what happened to you? And he goes, it's not what happened to me, it's what happened to you. I don't know you. I don't recognize you. You're not my brother. And for 2 hours, he goes, I don't care what you have to do. Be my brother again. Wow. And it was, again, a very long, drawn-out story, shortened extensively, but he saved my life because I was going down a path of, well, I guess I just got to marry this girl. And no, you can be responsible and also understand that you got to make a big decision that's probably going to hurt yourself and others for a little bit. But on the other end of that, it's going to be better for both of you.
Wow.
And as we're as amicable as we can be, the twins' mom and I, and we work it out, and we're good co-parents together. But yeah, it was actually wisdom from my younger brother. He's one of the wisest men I've ever met.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and that was the moment where I was like, you're a man now. Step up, because what you were being before was just existing. An echo, as Mark Twain would say.
Yeah.
You were an echo. You're not a man. And I just got stuck. And he sat down with me and he was like, again, I don't, Adam, I don't care what you do. I don't go work on the street corner or something. Like, I don't care what you do. Get out of whatever you're in because you're not my brother anymore. And that was like and to say not everybody's story is dramatic, mine was extremely dramatic.
Yeah.
I have a thing for that. But yeah, that was my defining moment. I was stuck in a rut for 2 years and didn't know how to get out and didn't know what to do. And I didn't think I had the strength to make the decision myself.
Yeah.
And so it took that communal power of someone else from seeing from the outside. And in this case, it was my brother. But yeah, he's like, get out. You're done.
And what's cool about that story is we were saying how we tend to associate wisdom with like, oh, some older person.
Right.
But it isn't necessarily that like, oh, wisdom always comes from the old. Like,
no.
When you're older, you should still listen to the perspective of people younger, because sometimes they see the world in a way that you don't, and you could be missing out on real wisdom from, say, your younger brother.
Right.
If you think, oh, I'm superior, I know more than him.
Right. And that's kind of how it was.
Wow.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And thank all of you for joining us at the table.
Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.
Peace. I've been holding in a fart this whole time. My stomach is killing me.
Steve